to the face naturally. In Sid's face in particular, you can see the moles and you can see the wrinkles overlaid into it, actually deforming the model, and you can see dry skin. And then the hair on the back of his head feels really oily.
And then
Jane is a real confident type, and when I was working on her hair, I wanted to make sure that it felt like she was really strong. So one of the things about her hair is that it's really pulled back really tight, but I also wanted to get the feeling of the layers and a little bit of coloration in the hair. Moving on to talking about Gray, I tried to maintain the feeling of his personality and military look, chiseled haircut.
He seemed very capable and determined, sir.
In the love scene, it really stands out, and you can see the silhouetting of the hair and the fibers. With Hein, you could really see that he's the antagonist, and it shows it a lot in the way his features are chiseled. I wanted to sort of get the biker hairstyle, sort of a layering effect, kind of harsh looking,
you're going to be a hero.
but self-conscious in a way. In the case of Aki's hair, we have simulation tools that we developed to try to achieve the feeling of the wind and gravity on the hair, and you can really feel that the hair is flowing in space. Even though Aki's hair looks combed most of the time, it's quite a job to make it feel natural and not too messy. She doesn't have many bad hair days.
My name is Takawa Noguchi. I am the supervisor of the Phantom Project. My job was to take the creature illustrations and designs of Yasushi Narasawa and rework them to make completed creature designs in the computer and models for use in computer graphics. The dead phantom that appears first is orange-colored, looking something like an X-ray photo a doctor might use, or maybe the illustration of a dissection, something like that. So we based it on reference materials where you can see the internal organs, the bones and so forth.
Let's not forget my personal favorite, the big fat giant phantom.
My name is Bo Mosley. I'm a lead artist in sets and props at Score USA. We were responsible for creating all of the sets, all of the environments, all of the props, basically anything that wasn't a character or the visual effects. Sets and props had a unique job on the movie in that we had to create environments and sets that wouldn't necessarily compete with the characters. A lot of other productions, the modeling department was tasked with creating, a hero vehicle or a hero set, something that had the wow factor. Well, we literally had to take a few steps back and realize that the characters were getting the wow factor, and our sets had to complement them and not compete with them. And that was a lot more rewarding than what we would have done on another production somewhere else. They had the foresight to hire production artists who weren't necessarily straight production artists. We have a lot of people who are engineers, they have a background in architecture, industrial design, and I think that went a long ways to giving the environments the realism that they needed to frame these characters.
My name's Spencer Knapp, and I'm a lead visual effects artist. The visual effects artist does all the good scary stuff. The explosions, ships crashing, people crashing through glass. We're responsible for doing stuff like dust and creating an atmosphere for a particular shot. The first task that I was assigned with when I first got out here was working on the HDG, the high-density gas. The troopers, Gray and the other D-Buys, jump from a transporter ship onto the ground, and instead of using parachutes to slow their fall, they use this high-density gas. High-density gas starts off as a gel. They fire these gel packs. When it hits the ground, it expands into a big cushion, and they fall into that cushion, and then it immediately vaporizes so they can go on with their task of fighting the phantoms and saving Aki. When the trooper was falling into the gel, they wanted some bubbles and vapor effects so that you could see that it's actually cushioning his fall. I've been scuba diving for a long time, and a couple of the other guys that were working on the shot, we decided to go out and do some scuba dives and watch each other enter the water and see how all the bubbles in the water just completely surround the person. We're going to Coco Marina and look at some bubbles. So we used that as inspiration for creating the bubbles. that are inside the high-density gas. A lot of times we were required to put in dust for crowds of phantoms running to create a sense of depth. If you just had phantoms, a whole crowd of phantoms running at the camera without any kind of foot dust, it would look less realistic. And then the foot dust also tends to allow you to create a sense of depth in the shot. There's a particular scene in the movie during a panic sequence. A escape pod filled with passengers is taking off and leaving the city. And a snake phantom cuts right through the nose cone of the escape pod, killing the pilot. So the escape pod is now out of control, and it falls from the sky, crashing on the deck where there are people forced to run and avoid the collision of this escape pod on the ground. A shot like that without visual effects would lack that level of realism. Everything from the tumbling of the ship itself to the smoke to the sparks was all VFX elements, as well as the barrier shield itself that you see in the background that's on the verge of failing. If we take a look at a final shot from the movie, like the crater shot, it's the climax of the movie where the Zeus cannon is firing at the crater and it's causing the crater ground to collapse. Aki and Gray are in the Quattro, which is precariously positioned on this cliff, and the ground is falling away beneath them. And there's a shot in the movie where you're deep inside the cliff and you're looking up, and the ground surrounding everything is collapsing, and the Quattro itself falls off the ledge and falls towards camera. The VFX in that shot were all the tumbling rocks, some of which were hand animated and some of which were animated using dynamic simulation. And then there's dust from rocks hitting each other, from the cliff faces themselves. Lots of rocks and dust.
My name is Angela Elias. I am a lead lighting artist on the movie Final Fantasy. It's not your typical cartoon. We don't have the bright daylight, and we don't have the happy indoor warm lighting. It's got a lot more atmosphere in it than a lot of your other CG movies. Our story's darker, it's more intense. We want to keep the mood going, and you have to carry that through with the lighting. Whether that would be inside the space station, where you've got lots of holograms and lighting from artificial lights coming in, or say out in a barren waste field where you would have lots of clouds diffusing the light.
I don't see how any living thing could survive out here.
We don't want it bright, we don't want it cheery, because there's dead soldiers around, there's danger right around the corner. So you got to keep it kind of not happy. I think lighting is actually thought about right from the beginning, but it doesn't actually come into play till much later, after the sets and props are built, after our characters are animated, and that's when we start layering, after everybody else is done. Like in the beginning of the movie when Aki's coming down into New York City. Everything's pretty much lit very blue from a main moon lighting sense, but a lot of the key lights or primary lights are actually coming from a practical source. Her goggle light, as she's running, it's highlighting different aspects that the camera's following. The love scene in Final Fantasy was actually a very difficult scene to light, but it also played a crucial role in setting the mood, where you have a high contrast light coming in from outer space, the little space windows or portholes up on the top. You always wanted to keep the two characters rim-lit, but keep them filled really soft, so you get this mysterious, romantic setting. One of my favorite scenes in the movie would have to be Hein's suicide attempt. The animation that Matt Hackett did showed a lot of emotion, and it's also one of the only sequences in the movie that has a high contrast lighting that sets off the mood when he's contemplating all the destruction that he's caused.